to the Feed You podcast, giving you the real scoop on raising your business to new heights. Expert education, inspiration, and motivation to fuel your purpose, your passion, and your profits. Here's your host, Elisa Connor.
Hello. Welcome to the Feed You podcast. It's so great to have you here. Thanks for tuning in. I know you have options for your weekly learning and your business education, so I appreciate you being here and tuning in every week. If this is your first time here, thank you for joining us, and I would love for you to like or subscribe to this podcast and share it with a friend if you love it. This week, so we're going to take a step in a little bit of a different direction. The last few weeks we've been talking about sales funnels, and this week I really wanted to talk about something that seems to come up quite often with business owners, and that is this mindset that we have to have everything figured out, and that we have to have it perfect right now, and we can't put it out into the world until it's perfect. And I am totally raising my hand because I am definitely one of those people. But experience has taught me, working with some of the air quote, and I'm using air quote masters, that ultimately nobody has it all figured out. And the difference between those that succeed and those that are struggling a little bit is often the lack of action, the lack of the I'm just going to jump off the cliff and hope there's a parachute that opens up when I pull this cord, this rip cord. And I've worked with some amazing entrepreneurs, especially in the last quarter. And I will tell you what, behind the scenes, their house is a hot mess. But the difference is they don't care. They're jumping in, they're making it happen, they're getting in front of the people they need to get in front of, and they are launching, and they are putting their information out there, and they're putting their course out there, and they're putting their product and service out there, and people are buying it. So if you don't ever put it out there, no one can ever benefit from it. And I've been struggling with this for quite a long time. I've had a couple courses that I put together and haven't launched out there, and it's because I have perfectionitis, and I am doing my best to resolve that. And so I just wanted to give you some of the inside scoop, and I don't want to use the company's names that I've worked with because it's probably not a nice thing. I want them to invite me back, but let's just say I've worked with some of the bigger companies in the industry, and there's a particular event that I've done now since September, and this company specifically puts, they take their clients and they teach them how to get on stages across the world. And it's a great company. The CEO or the CEO and the founder of that company is just a phenomenal human being, very big-hearted, love him to death, just really grounded, really has a heart of gold, and really feel blessed that I get to work with that organization on a regular basis. But what I found, and the most frustrating part of this as a contractor for them, is that their behind-the-scenes processes are a hot mess. And so I always take that as a sign of what direction should I be moving in? And I know that documenting processes is one of the things that has been on my to-do list, and maybe it's on your to-do list too, for moving forward. But I will tell you now that if you can come up with a way to document your processes, and I'm working on that for my own business, and have them ready and have them available, that when you start to bring on your team members, it is going to be so much easier for them to jump in, get in the game, and be able to get going on the tasks that you specifically need them to, because there is nothing worse than jumping into, say, a product launch or a live event or something like that, and having people try to get up to speed at the same time as doing the event. And a lot of times when we are newer entrepreneurs, or we don't have, a newer small business, or even a small business years down the road, we don't have a big team, and we're kind of afraid to bring in people. Well, one of the things that I've learned is that the sooner you can bring them in, even if it's just, earlier in the game before you decide to have that live event or that webinar or whatever that might be, so you can get them on board with your company culture and how your company runs and the things that you have as your values, the better. because you're going to know a couple of things. Number one, you're going to know right away whether or not they're going to be a fit for your team and your culture. And number two, you're going to know how they react to things being thrown at them that were unexpected. And the worst time to have that happen is when you have a room full of people or a webinar full of people and you've got issues with your team behind the scenes. And so not only getting those processes down so you can kind of get them onboarded, but an onboarding process is really, really important, regardless of if you're doing like just client onboarding or you're doing employee onboarding or contractor onboarding. Having a really clear process for that is going to be really helpful, but also onboarding into what their duties are, or what you want them to take care of. And so some of that is just going to take some brainstorming. And a lot of times I just find myself sitting down and journaling about, okay, what are the things I do all the time that I really don't want to be doing and that I need to give to someone else? And those are the processes that I'm starting to create. And I'm doing that really easily by either doing a video screen capture using a tool called Loom, just like a weaving loom, Loom. And then I use another company to transcribe those. And of course, you have to go in and clean it up, but it's called Temi, and I will put it in the show notes because these are both kind of weird spellings, but Temi is Temi, and they will do a quick transcription. It's super cheap, but that's a great way for you to get that set up. And then I recommend setting that up in Dropbox. So if you're not familiar with Dropbox, it's a great option to include. You could also do it in Google Drive, but one of those two, Google Drive or Dropbox, are the two I'd use. Google Drive might be a little bit easier to share with people if you're having them do like they need to create continual documents and things like that. But eventually you will have to pay in order to do that. I would say choose one way or the other. So either Dropbox or Google Drive. And I've had both experiences with both, depending on the organization, but that would be the first call. But then when you start to create those processes, you can put them into one of those two areas and then give your contractor access or cut off access really quickly. Now, my mentor does it a different way. He actually creates mini courses as training modules for his staff and his team members. And he does that through Kajabi, and I will also link to Kajabi in the show notes. I love Kajabi. I'm moving my course over there, and I will probably eventually move my website over there. If you don't know about Kajabi, it's an all-in-one solution, and you can create products, you can have courses, you can have membership, it does your email, it has all your opt-in forms, but lots of different options over there. But it is a more financial, it's a bigger investment for Kajabi. And so I like to give people an option to use something a little bit less expensive depending on where they're at in their business. So those three tools, Kajabi, Temi, and Loom, I will put in the show notes. And then if you aren't familiar with Google Docs, that is through Google, I can stick that in there. If you have I'm trying to think of what they call it now. It's like a business version of Google. And it's totally escaping my brain right now because I changed the name of it a little while ago. But if you have an email through, it's G Suite. It's called G Suite. So if you have an email that is, your name at your domain name, so, Shelly at smithsadventures.com or something like that, then you will likely be using G Suite unless you're using the email service provider through your internet hosting, which I don't recommend. It's kind of a hot mess to get into, but G Suite's a great alternative. So I'll link to that too. But with G Suite, you also get an upgraded version of Google Docs, which is super nice because you can create templates and all kinds of stuff in there, and it's actually super reasonable. I think it's, I don't want to quote the pricing because I know they just changed it, but it's something like $6 a month for your email and access to G Suite. So super reasonable, highly recommend it. I use Dropbox for some other I actually use both. I'm not a good taker of my own medicine, but I have purpose for both because of different files that I need to have in there. So you may need to use both, but when it comes to your teamwork, I would say pick one or the other. Pick one direction and go that way. And that's one of the things that I have found with my second example, who is a very, very big name in the space. He works with coaches. He specifically teaches people to create masterminds. And if you've been anywhere on Facebook recently, you probably know who this person is. But I got the opportunity to work with him and his team in February. I did not get to meet him. Really enjoyed his online course. They did a really great job with that for the majority of it. Some really big names that he's connected to. But I found, like, one of the things that happened is when we went to work their live event is that they had not ironed out their process for their team, in which arena they wanted them to be processing documents. And specifically, we were doing copywriting. And to work with the attendees, they had set them all up in Google Drive, and then they had set us up in Dropbox. And so there was no way to share notes. And so it just takes a little bit of forethought to kind of plan out, like, what does that look like, and what does your business model look like, and what would you have those employees doing behind the scenes? So like with copywriting, they probably didn't know, because they'd never had copywriters, that, we have to go back and forth with the attendees about their copy quite often. And to, go back and forth with Dropbox, you have to go into Dropbox, open it up, put it in a Word document, put it in a Google Drive, and then you're not sharing any of that information. You have to keep sending it back and forth. And we all know what happens when we send it back and forth in email. It's a hot mess. So that is one of the reasons that if you can keep that streamlined in one of those places, it's going to make it much easier for you, for the people that you're serving, and for your team that you bring on. So those are some examples of people that, these are big names. Like, they are multi-million dollar companies. And so one of the reasons I wanted to use them as examples is that I was going through this and I have found this. These aren't the only two. Like, I've had some other companies that I've worked with bigger names, and I just had this expectation that, they totally, they're making millions of dollars. They have to have all this ironed out. They are the powers that be. Well, I'm here to tell you from the backside, they don't. So if that gives you any hope or any solace in the fact that you don't get everything done in your business, I just glanced over at my monitor, and I have a quote over there that's so perfect for this episode, and I have it there on purpose because it's a good reminder for me. The quote is, "Done is better than perfect," and that's so true. Is that sometimes you have to leap in and just try something out, like what happened with these two different events. They just keep trying things out. But if you can have kind of an overview foundation for your process, like what you want it to look like, you're going to it's going to go much smoother. And so I wanted to give you some tips on how to do that, because I like you to have things that you can walk away with. So number one, pick your platform of how you're going to onboard people. Is that going to be through Google Docs? Is it going to be, a combination? Are you going to create a course in something like Kajabi that they go through? Do you have a team member that manages that? Do you have more than one team member? What are all the different components? Because there's things you don't even think about, like how are they going to get paid, and what's the best way to pay them, and how do you collect that information, and how do you keep it secure, and like all of these different things as you bring people on, especially if they're regular contractors. And then, you've got to do the tax paperwork. So then do you have to bring the accountant in, and how do you bring them into the system? So a great way to figure out, because you're still working on your business. I get it. I'm in the same boat. So a great way to figure that out and kind of start that process is, like, as you're going through something, use a tool like Loom and just document what you're doing. So for example, I've talked about this before. As I put this podcast out, what I've started to do is every time I do a podcast, I just pull up Loom, I do a quick video, and I'm like, okay, I do this, I do this, I do this, I do this. And then I send that little tidbit over to Temmie. I have him transcribe it, and then I am pulling that down as a Word document, and I can create that process document in G Suite, which is what I use. And so now I've kind of started to set that up, and as I bring somebody on as a community manager or a virtual assistant or whatever that role looks like, as I start to formulate that, I have those documents already created. And so if you don't have a team already that you can get feedback from, a great place to do this is to just brainstorm with some friends or with some business associates and say, hey, what do you think about this? Does this make sense? Like, document the process, have them take a few minutes to read through it, and then buy them a glass of wine or something. But once you start to get that feedback from, people, you could even go back to previous customers and say, hey, what was smooth and what was kind of a nightmare? And they will tell you if they've had a good relationship, like, the follow-up was terrible, or the payment thing was a nightmare, or I never got your emails, or whatever it is. And so just start writing those things down, and also write down the things that went well, because those are things that you can replicate. And then, like I said, you need to document, record, and review those processes so that you at least have something down. And if it's not perfect, who cares? You can go back and do it later, but at least you have a starting place. And then once you have that documented, then you can start to make decisions around, who you want on your team, what the process is going to look like, and you can just start building it, like almost like a foundation of a building. Like, you have to start somewhere. You have to create the foundation of the building, and then you got to put the 2x4s up to start build the walls, and then you've got all the different components that you have in there. Then you put the outside surface piece of it, and then you build all the outside, and then you've got to do the inside. So your business is the same way. Like, if you're building that from the inside out or the outside in, you've got to think about, like, what are all the things you have going on now? What are the things that get dropped and why? And those would probably be the first places to start documenting processes, and then bring somebody in to help with those pieces. And then, as I mentioned, a great place to get feedback is from the people that have worked with you. So if you have an event, you've had attendees that come, make sure you have like an exit survey, and even an exit survey for clients when they finish up working with you, and what would have been better, what went great, what really worked for you, what didn't work for you, what were your expectations and were they met, and all those different things. I just noticed that my son's school this week emailed an exit survey for their high school, and I thought that was really a great idea for them to take feedback from the seniors, because they will, kids can be pretty honest about what they liked, what they didn't like, all those kinds of things. So if you don't have an exit survey created for your business, I highly recommend doing that. And the other great thing about an exit survey is it's a great place to capture testimonials. So even if it's short, you can use a tool like SurveyMonkey, which is totally free. It may not match everything else in your brand, but until you're ready to pay for it, SurveyMonkey, or you could even create a survey on your website if you have the ability to do that. And just a quick survey, let them fill out, maybe 3 or 4 questions, let them write as much as they want. But then have some really specific questions that you want to ask about testimonials. And, can you use a testimonial? Give them the opportunity to upload a photo or a video if they want to. Video testimonials are gold if you can get them. So anyway, if it's possible, gather those testimonials, do an exit survey, and then celebrate any kind of results that your clients have had, because that's really important. I think a lot of people get through, all the things, and then they think, oh, I have this happen quite often with people that will hire me to launch their online courses. And we get to a point where they're like, oh, I've only had 100 people opt in. I'm like, are you crazy? 100 people? That's awesome. Like, we think we need to be at these levels of, we need to be making $1,000, right? Or, not $1,000, but $10,000 right out the chute. Well, we've never done this before. That's like saying I'm going to be an Olympic gold skater the first time I get on the ice. It doesn't happen. Just like with anything else, you have to have try and see what went right, see what went wrong, fix what went wrong, do it again. All the different things that you would have from any other experience in your life. And it's just not going to be like, you're not going to jump in a car and then be a speed racer. You've got to have all the steps along the way to learn how to be I think it's the Daytona 500, or I don't know. That was not a good example for me to use, obviously. Anyway, so And then, what can you, when you're having, say, an event, what's the next call to action for those people? So I find this quite often that people will do business with somebody and then there's no follow-up component. And so if you have, like, say, a photography business and you go and shoot photos for somebody, well, then what's the next step so that you can stay in front of them? Because eventually they're going to need photos again. So maybe it's like if you're a business photographer, for example, and you're doing business like headshots for their team, what's your follow-up process till they hire you again in 6 months or 9 months or a year? Because a lot of times people will drop the ball and there's no way to continue that working relationship. And maybe you offer them a package of like, hey, things shift, teams move, employees leave. I have this package where I'll come in every 90 days and do new photos for, new team members, or, changeover of people, or, you just want to refresh or whatever. So you need to brainstorm about what that looks like for your business, but think about a way to keep them moving forward and to stay top of mind with them. And then last but not least is like whenever you're collecting that kind of feedback from your client experiences, or if you hold events or whatever that might be, is like, what are the maybe 2 or 3 things that you can improve on from this time for the next time? And this is the same scenario for just one-on-one clients or group coaching or even a webinar. Is like, okay, like I was alluding to earlier, you're not going to get it perfect right out of the chute. You have to practice. And so if you can just take away like, next time I would make sure that we had these emails set up, and so that they had a little bit more nurturing on the front end, or maybe next time we would do the exit survey right away. And just choosing 2 or 3 things so you don't become overwhelmed will help you really tighten up that process, which then you can go in and modify because you've already set it up. And so it's much easier to go in and modify a process than to start from the beginning every time. And so those are the things that I would recommend for you. And if nothing else in this time of, running your business and kind of restarting as things are opening up, is just to kind of keep in mind, everybody's in the same boat. Nobody has this all figured out, because if they did, then they wouldn't need to work anymore because they would be gajillionaires. So even the people that are making millions and millions of dollars don't have it figured out. So that's what I've got for you this week. And I apologize for the background noise. I've got lots of people home still. So that's what I have for you this week. I look forward to talking to you next week. And we are going to talk all about offers. So if you are struggling with putting an offer together for your business, or your offers just aren't hitting with your target audience, or you just can't figure out how to sell, next week will be a great week for you to tune into and get some know-how, some tips and tools and tricks. So until then, be well, stay healthy, and I'll talk with you soon. Take care. If you're struggling with what to say, who to say it to, and where to say it, you may need my new Ideal Client Worksheet. If you know your audience, you know where they hang out, and you know what they're interested in, it makes every piece of your marketing easier to put together. The Ideal Client Worksheet helps you discover the important questions that you need to ask when it comes to finding your clients. It will help you understand them, understand their problems, so that you connect with them, attract them, turn them into leads, and convert them into customers. So go grab your copy today at alisaconnor.com/ideal client. See you next week.